IPA looms large in modern beer, but hazy juice is only a tiny part of its story.
This storied style is rooted in Britain's colonial past, a history intertwined with the brutal East India Company, a violent regime in India.
The name Indian Pale Ale was first used in the early 19th century.
But its origins can be traced back even further.
The export of pale ale from England to India was underway by the late 18th century.
And by that time, brewers were already being advised that extra hops should be added to beer for export to warm countries.
A move designed to prevent spoilage due to hops' antimicrobial qualities.
From there, IPA grew into a moderately strong, heavily hopped pale beer, and its popularity grew back in England too.
Fast forward more than 100 years and pioneering American brewers got their hands on the style.
First on the West Coast, where its hallmark characteristics were turned up to 11 and English hops were replaced with bold, new American varieties.
Then in the Northeast, where the use of aromatic English ale yeasts and high-protein malt grists brought us to where we are today.
So my first experience with IPA started before I even really started to get into beer, and that was with classic kind of cask IPA, 3.5% or so down the local pub. And I've got to say, it wasn't a style that I initially got into, but that definitely changed for me when I started to drink more of the kind of bigger, hoppier styles, which I just found had a lot more character to them.
My light bulb moment was probably the first time I went to IndieMan BeerCon, which would have been 2015, I think, and didn't really know what I was doing, didn't know what I was really seeking out, but I came across Squawk, which so happened were from Manchester, and I had a beer from them called IPA 3 or III, and yeah, it was, I mean, looking back it might not be as hazy as I remember, but it was certainly hazy for the time, or what I remember having there, and it was really juicy and kind of tropical fruit forward and really easy to drink. I think it was 6-7%, which again at the time I thought was a really strong beer. From there, that led me to seeking out other things.
I was doing a night DJing in a bar in Didsbury in Manchester, and one of the bartenders brought me over Goose Island Ipa, and it was something which was it blew my mind at the time. You know, with all the sort of malty stuff that was out there, this kind of came at you with so much bitterness and citrus fruit, and it was just it was incredible. It really it can't be understated how big that beer was at the time. You know, like the fridges were completely full of Belgian and German beers, and this one American beer really stood out.
Things which captured my imagination and made me want to drink, I'd say, like stronger and stronger beers. I'm not a pint drinker by any means. I would have a third or a half. Beers that kind of, I use this a lot in work, they're that saturated in flavour that I can kind of compare them to being almost like a cocktail or a nice kind of strong coffee. Like when I have coffee, I drink a cortado or an espresso, and I want a really kind of short drink but really intense and saturated in flavour.
So while I do really appreciate a kind of softer, fruity, hazy IPA, especially after a long day at work, the classics that I always go back to tend to be the really kind of high bitterness, the West Coast IPAs. And an example of that I really love is Sierra Nevada Torpedo. It's one that I started out the IPA journey on, and it's just one that I find so deeply refreshing, and it's something that I found a little bit harder to come by in the past few years. So whenever I see it in a shop or behind a bar anywhere, I'm always really happy. Kind of classics like Stone IPA as well, anything like that, Russian River, Pliny, those kind of classics.
I don't like anything to kind of rip your palate apart, but I like it to really satisfy you and make you want to dive in and be a bit of an experience, really.
I'm looking for clear and defined flavours, not necessarily balance. Balance is something which I don't look for in this type of beer.
When I crack the can open, I want the aroma to kind of jump out the can, or to jump out the glass if I was drinking it on draft. You know, before I've even got it to my lips, I want it to look and smell amazing, and really want you to not waste a second to kind of, to get it in your mouth. And then
with the kind of softer, fruitier hops that we're using, it influences the brewing process in every way. So, for example, the malt bill becomes a lot more pared back, and you'll see more oats, more wheat to thicken the body, but generally not as many crystal malts that give you that caramelly flavour to balance out those hops. So while we have this trend of the softer, fruitier hops, that's definitely what we're seeing, and we're seeing kind of very pale, very hazy beers. But when it comes to the West Coast style, where you're showcasing hops that have much more of a kind of grapefruity, piney, resinous characteristic, it's actually really nice to balance that out with more crystal malts, so kind of more of a caramel, toffee sort of character that helps to offset the bitterness almost and give it some context.
It's a style which is constantly in evolution, and I think that that's what kind of draws me to the style and has never really taken me away from it.